They told me to tear down the cabin my grandfather built. Claimed it broke their neighborhood rules. But this land, it's been ours since before their fences existed. Now they're facing federal charges for threatening me on tribal soil. This isn't just a cabin, it's a war over history, and they just lost. I had just finished staining the last window frame when the first letter arrived. Folded perfectly, sealed with HOA letterhead, and dropped off without a single knock, like they were ashamed to speak to me directly. That's how it started. Dear occupant. Structure in violation of Community Ordinance 4B, unauthorized construction in Greenbelt Zone. Remove within 14 days or face daily fines. Greenbelt. I wasn't even in their jurisdiction. I lived on 12 acres of quiet land nestled just past the HOA border, land that had been passed down through generations of my family. Land with federal tribal protection going back to 1972. And the cabin? It was a modern rebuild of the old hunting shelter my grandfather built, fully permitted and approved under state and federal codes. But someone didn't like that I was here. Her name was Cheryl Whitman, the HOA president. She first showed up the next morning with her little clipboard, a forced smile, and a camera phone already recording. You can't just throw up a shack and call it home, she said, standing right at the invisible line between her world and mine. I calmly told her I had all permits. She rolled her eyes. I'll be escalating this, she said, turning on her heels like a soap opera villain. And she did. Paper wars and power plays. Over the next 2 weeks, I received 6 more notices. Each one more aggressive. They claimed my solar panels were an eyesore visible from community walking paths, that my driveway encouraged off-road behavior, and my compost bin was attracting wildlife. I didn't even live inside the HOA. One morning, a private contractor showed up, no warning, and began measuring my property line. You folks about to be served a tear-down notice, he muttered, thinking I was just a tenant. HOA says you're encroaching. I showed him the federal surveyor's map and the tribal designation. He blinked. Oh, he said. Well, they didn't mention that. Because they didn't know. Cheryl and her board were so convinced of their suburban sovereignty that they didn't bother researching the land's status. They saw my skin tone, my name, Elijah Littlefeather, and assumed I was squatting on open land or worse, trying to skirt their pristine codes. But this wasn't just land. It was sovereign territory. My grandfather had fought for years to get it recognized. He had testified in D.C. He'd stood before state senators with maps and burial records and photos. And now I was the steward. So I called my lawyer, a fellow tribal advocate, and filed a formal cease and desist under the Indian Self-Determination Act and the Tribal Lands Protection Statute. We also contacted the Bureau of Indian Affairs and submitted the HOA's threatening letters as evidence. But Cheryl wasn't done. She posted a community-wide alert with my face on it. Unauthorized structure. Possible squatter. Call security if seen trespassing. It went viral within the neighborhood Facebook group. Someone emailed it to me. That's when I decided it was time for Cheryl and her clipboard to learn a lesson in law. The line in the land. The hearing was scheduled by the local zoning review board after Cheryl filed an official complaint, her last mistake. I walked in with a copy of the 1972 ruling, complete with a seal from the U.S. Department of the Interior. My lawyer carried in 2 binders, one with federal land law and another with HOA overreach cases. Cheryl showed up with 3 board members and no legal representation. She looked smug. Until the opening statement. This property is not subject to the HOA. It is federally protected under Tribal Land Designation Section 118, Clause B, as reaffirmed in 2008 and again in 2019, my lawyer began. Cheryl interrupted. That can't be true. It's within visual distance of our boundary line. The board chair leaned forward. Ma'am, this isn't about what you can see. This is about what you can legally claim. And based on what I'm reading, you have 0 jurisdiction. In fact, you may be violating federal law by threatening a resident on tribal land. Silence. Then my lawyer dropped the final bomb, a formal harassment claim backed by the tribal council, including a notarized letter from our elder historian stating the cultural and spiritual significance of the site. Cheryl turned pale. The board voted unanimously to dismiss all HOA claims and issued a written apology. But I wasn't done. Later that week, I hosted a community gathering, right there at the cabin. Neighbors from both sides came, including some who had believed Cheryl's story. We held a traditional drum ceremony, offered food, and told the story of our land's legacy. That cabin wasn't just mine. It was a symbol. A symbol that people like Cheryl could no longer steamroll history, identity, or rights under the false flag of neighborhood rules. They tried to erase my home with fine print and fake authority. But this land, it's older than their paperwork. Older than their fences, signs, and Facebook groups. And when you stand on truth, no HOA, no Karen, no clipboard can tear you down. If you believe heritage beats harassment, like, subscribe, and drop a comment. No one owns our story but us. His channel tells the stories HOA boards want buried. We don't just build cabins. We build justice, one video at a time.